The rumor mill abounds that Konami is making a deal with PlayStation. Now, PlayStation's not buying Konami, but a few of its games are going to be exclusive console released on the PlayStation, which is something that Sony has been doing for an entire generation now and doing it correctly, to be honest. I mean, that's exactly what makes Sony. That's what makes PlayStation the PlayStation. And it does look like this deal is happening. Metal Gear Solid 3, Silent Hill, maybe Castlevania coming to the PlayStation as a third-party exclusive launch release on their console. Which does beg the question, does Xbox have a problem getting these third-party releases, or should they go after these third-party type of deals? I think they should go after these third-party type of deals. Obviously, everybody probably does. However, having said that, there are some issues there, and actually Paul Tassi over at Forbes brings up some of the issues that may exist for Xbox that don't necessarily exist for Sony, and I do think it's worth reviewing. I think he brings up some solid points here. So what I want to do is read through this article together, the entire thing. We're going to stop and comment on points that I think are relevant. But it's titled, "The Xbox Situation is Hurting Microsoft's Ability to Get Big Third-Party Exclusives." I do think here off the bat, it is a little bit disingenuous to say that it's hurting their ability because Microsoft has been 1000% focused on closing the Activision Blizzard deal. I don't think that they've necessarily been trying to go after third-party deals. Now, I'm not a behind-the-scenes guy. I don't know what's been happening behind the scenes. Perhaps Paul Tassi knows something that I don't. He probably does. But I would imagine that Xbox is 100% about closing the Activision Blizzard deal. They're not interested in looking at third-party developers, which, can I just say, the fact that Sony is the number one opposition to that deal says that it's going to hurt gaming forever, even though they're the market share leader, is okay making these exclusive deals with third parties. Is that any different? I mean, I guess in the big picture, it's different. Sure, of course, because they're not buying it, but does it not harm gamers? If you're all about protecting gamers' rights, isn't that counterintuitive to what you're doing right there with your third-party exclusives? But I digress. Let's read through this because I do think he brings up some good points here. He says, there's rumbling ahead of Sony's summer showcase that Konami is about to announce some sort of exclusive Metal Gear Solid / Silent Hill release on PlayStation. That would join past cozy relationships Sony has with places like From Software and Square Enix, despite the fact that they own neither. In 2023, for instance, one of the biggest releases of the year will be Final Fantasy, where the only console that it will be on is PlayStation, despite it not being a first-party game. And I think that's the right move. I really do. I think this was what helps build PlayStation's mystique around having really quality game. Also, a game like Final Fantasy, a game like Metal Gear Solid, a game like Silent Hill fits the PlayStation brand perfectly. So it's not just that you're getting these third-party deals, but you're getting third-party deals that fit your brand. Whereas, rather than going out, if Microsoft approaches this, rather than going out and getting just great games, yes, we want great games, but more importantly, games that fit your brand. And that's what Sony has done a really good job at. He continues, Microsoft continues to lean harder and harder on Xbox Game Pass as time goes by, reportedly really only concerned about growing those subscriptions as opposed to selling hardware. Not reportedly. That is what they're saying, everybody. I really don't understand. Maybe they not said it explicitly, but that's semantics. It's what they're doing. Everybody knows Game Pass is their business model. There's no reportedly, there just is. It's their business model. However, when it comes to third-party deals, and if we're talking big exclusives like Final Fantasy, Metal Gear, and Silent Hill, they're being left out of the conversation more often than not. In the past, Microsoft has attempted to craft these sort of deals, a reported $100 million for Square Enix's Rise of the Tomb Raider, and things like the Outriders launch on Game Pass, but the effectiveness of those has been frequently debated. The more time goes on and the deeper we get into the console generation, what is with this ad? Websites, stop advertising the crap out of me. It's distracting. The more time goes on and the deeper we get into this console generation, the tougher the sell becomes. And it feels like Microsoft will lose out on more and more of these big deals as we have not seen all that many of late. So why does it become tougher? It becomes tougher because a game wants to be on a platform that has the most users. So PlayStation has sold the most units, so makes sense that it would be easier for PlayStation to land a deal for an exclusive game on its console over Microsoft. But that's going to be the reality no matter what, as long as Microsoft is behind And the thing is as you grow Game Pass, you got to start somewhere with Game Pass. As you grow Game Pass, if Game Pass continues to grow with the amount of users, it becomes easier and easier for you to get games on your Game Pass. So it's Paul Tassie's inferring here that the more Microsoft focuses on Game Pass, the harder it's becoming because they're not selling consoles. I disagree. I don't think Microsoft's not concerned about selling consoles. Microsoft's concerned about selling Game Pass. So you're not trying to get exclusives for your Xbox console like you are with PlayStation. You're trying to get exclusives for Game Pass. So there's a little bit of a difference there. And I think you got to start somewhere. So of course it's going to be harder until you grow to a number that makes it easier for you. That's just nature there. That means in Microsoft's case, there are two main ways to secure high profile third-party exclusives. Number one, you pay an exorbitant amount of money to a publisher for a Game Pass launch. Far more than you would for a normal exclusivity deal, because the game will sell a fractional amount as a standard launch. The benefit to Xbox, therefore, has to be almost a knowable increase in Game Pass subs and marketing for the service because of the presence of the game. That's a good point. However, I disagree slightly because I think Microsoft does know what a big game. Let's pretend God of War is exclusively on Game Pass, just for a moment. Do you not think that sells Game Pass subs? Yes, because it adds value. So, but rather than one game being the focus, it's hey, we have all these games for this amazing value. Oh yeah, plus we have this fantastic game. So it actually puts less pressure in my mind on Xbox to get these third-party exclusives because they're not concerned about consoles. They're concerned about Game Pass subs. But point taken. The benefit to Xbox, therefore, has to be some almost a noble increase in Game Pass subs and marketing for the service because of the presence of the game. To be clear, there's only a few companies that could do this. Microsoft's so big, it can do this, and it's going to be that game. It's the same as it works with Netflix or Disney Plus or Amazon Prime. It's all about building a library of content that people want to subscribe to over time. That's exactly what it is with Game Pass, rather than one game offs. But you do have to pay more. He says you're going to have to pay more because you're not getting sales for games. You're getting this Game Pass subscription. I don't know what that looks like on the back end. I think it would be really interesting to know like how they divvy that up or choose to divvy that up. It's fascinating. Point number 2. And then what are these? The first two main ways to secure high-profile third-party titles. Point number 2, he says, so first way is to pay a lot of money to get them on Game Pass. Number 2, you do a normal exclusive launch, not on Game Pass. See, I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they would ever do that. There are, of course, third-party games sold on Xbox all the time that are not part of Game Pass, so that aspect isn't mandatory and may be cheaper to secure. However, you borderline never see these deals because what publisher can be convinced to launch their AAA mega game only on Xbox, which is at a large sales deficit compared to PlayStation. Last generation was 2-1. This generation is probably going to move closer to that now that PS5 supply has increased. That's a great point. But again, I don't think Microsoft is concerned about going for these deals on it's why they've been buying all these companies, because it's the Netflix model. It's a library of content. The one-off exclusives do not matter in the long run. It's how much value can you bring to a gamer to convince them to subscribe to Game Pass. Do mega titles help that? Yes, but I think that's where Microsoft's going to be leaning on its first-party titles, to which some of you may say, well, look at Redfall. Yes, look at Redfall. It's one game. Let's see what Starfield is. Let's see what Avowed is. Let's see what Hellblade 2 is. Let's see what they announce in this next Xbox game showcase. It's why it's why Activision Blizzard was such a big deal to them. And Sony knows it. That's why they stopped it. Because you get that, it's a content of library. It's a value proposition that you're making to your Game Pass subscribers. You better have an absolutely, Paul Tassi continues here, you better have an absolutely incredible relationship with big third-party devs to make that work, and I can't think of all that many instances where that would be the case. Anyone closely allied with Microsoft these days, Microsoft has bought them. Microsoft has made tandem deals for services like EA Play and Ubisoft Plus, which can be tacked onto Game Pass, but that just isn't the same thing. They don't have a Final Fantasy or Metal Gear Solid level deals and don't really have the best argument to secure those. Sure, not every console exclusive deal that Sony does pans out, for instance, Forspoken, but if Microsoft is struggling on the first-party front and simultaneously losing high-profile third-party games to Sony, that's not a good situation to be in. I agree with that completely. Let's reread that sentence real quick because that's the best point of this whole argument. If Microsoft is struggling on the first-party front and simultaneously losing high-profile third-party games to Sony, that's not a good situation to be in. 1000% agree with that. Absolutely. My only issue with this entire article, I think these are great points, something to just be aware of on the Xbox front, but I don't think Xbox is concerned about going after third-party exclusives that are not in Game Pass. Game Pass is its value proposition. Game Pass is its strategy, not console sales. And while that is the case, they will always lean rather on having a game on Game Pass rather than a third-party exclusive, whereas PlayStation's not made that move yet. PlayStation is still doing things the old way, and they shouldn't change. Why should they change? It's not broke for them. Don't fix it. Again, this is what we talked a little bit about yesterday about Blue Ocean strategies versus Red Ocean strategies. Red Ocean strategy is what is being discussed here. In other words, here's what has worked in the industry, third-party exclusives. Here's how Microsoft can compete doing that same strategy. A Blue Ocean strategy is what I believe Microsoft is doing, and that is create an entirely new sector for yourself. Compete where there is no competition, and that is Game Pass. And that's why I think long run, it's going to be hard to compete with Game Pass. Again, ask yourself, why did Sony oppose the deal? They were the only one. They were the only high-profile game publisher that did. Why did they oppose the deal so vehemently? Answer: because they see that Microsoft has something with Game Pass. So it's long term, it's better for Microsoft to just go out and buy a developer than spend a lot of money on these one-off single-party title exclusive deals that are limited in time, because it's about creating a library of content of value long term. Same as Netflix, again, same as Disney, same as every other streaming service out there. That's what Microsoft is trying to do with Game Pass. Regardless, I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's an interesting discussion to have because it does. I like this, Paul Tassi. Well done. It does shed some light on this strategy and what Microsoft, the institutional barriers that Microsoft has in competing with PlayStation in this strategy. Again, I don't think they're trying to. I think they're trying to create their own niche here, their own new sector, so to speak, with Game Pass. Are there any comments on this article? It's always interesting to check out the comments. The comments. All right, down here at the bottom, we have one comment on this from DA. Says, yes, sorry, but pretty much all I took away from this was Game Pass model means Microsoft less likely to engage with consumer unfriendly business model. I'm not really going to be too upset about that. Well said, DA. Well said. That's exactly the point. That's exactly the hypocrisy from PlayStation. Like, well, we're concerned about consumers. No, you're not. You're concerned about business competition. Let's not pretend this is not what it actually is. I would love to know what you guys think about all this. Am I right? Am I wrong? What did I miss out? Let me know in the comments below. Hit that like button, subscribe to this channel. My name is X1 the Gamer. We'll see you guys next time.